Thank you and good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight as part of the DGA's year-long celebration of its 75th anniversary. 75 years ago in 1936, a small group of prominent directors stood up against the major studios who were threatening to usurp the power and rights of directors and establish the Screenwriters Guild. These men put their careers on the line to create better and economic and creative conditions for all directors. The Guild commissioned a series of short films to celebrate this history, narrated by some of today's most prominent directors. So tonight we're pleased to get going by showing the film of our founding, narrated by Steven Spielberg.
Fred Zinnemann once said, "Before the Guild existed, films were regarded as merchandise. Nobody took them seriously as a creative medium. It was simply entertainment and merchandise. It was an uphill job to convince the studios that there was more to film than that some films could be classified as important contributions in the life of the country. We came together not just to get more salary and authority for us, but minimum wages for the larger number of underpaid directors. The ultimate purpose was better films." The Great Depression. A new president leads a nation struggling to survive, while legislation is passed granting unions the right to organize. American industry continues to cut costs, and so do the movies. In the silent era, the director was in charge, but with the arrival of sound, the potential for the industry exploded, and the studios lavished money on theaters and stages they couldn't afford. Hollywood soon faced its own crash. The moguls demanded assembly line efficiency, the color black oozing from balance sheets and savings at every turn. And the directors? They were only focused on the possibilities of telling stories.
I don't want to make ephemeral films. I want to pour my heart into something that will last.
He was Texas-born, a man of big spaces and heart. An optimist, but also a realist, King Vidor saw film as a canvas that could capture the struggles of the average man. Man against man, man against nature, man against society.
It can take years to find out who you are and respect yourself, the divinity of yourself. And you have to have the courage and the guts to put yourself into whatever you're doing.
Vidor believed the director must put his individual stamp on everything he does, not unlike the other directors of the day. They came from around the world, bringing their life experiences to a new art form that had the power to entertain and inspire a nation in need of a boost in morale. And they saw that the bosses had a very different agenda.
This sword that the property department sent over, look, I mean, is that what I'm going to fight a battle with?
A lot of directors were underpaid, and being underpaid also meant that they lack authority in many fields where the director should have authority.
The director, 9 times out of 10, is purely a cog in the machine.
But what the studios had not factored in was the passion a director brought to his work.
Directors, because of the nature of their profession, some might say the cussedness of their natures, are among the greatest individualists in the world. But all of us realize the need to band together to protect the integrity of motion picture production.
The moment that would forever change Hollywood came when the studio heads utilized their own Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences to assemble an industry meeting at the Roosevelt Hotel. There they announced a 50% cut in pay for all employees. Afterwards, a handful of directors gathered on the sidewalk.
The feeling was very strong that anyone who stood up and objected to taking this cut was fired.
Vidor's challenge was clear: to bring together men who didn't like to be told what to do or think.
We must have a guild to speak for us, not the individual who can be hurt for standing up for his rights.
And when Paramount announced that anyone who didn't accept the films assigned to them would have their contracts voided, the time for talking was over. December 23, 1935, 13 Mavericks secluded themselves at Vidor's house, and putting their careers on the line, they slapped down $100 each. They pledged to work together for one another and for those directors whose careers were more precarious. The first shot of a revolution had been fired to define the role of the motion picture director. A headquarters was leased with an exalted title, and the founding fathers of the Guild began to wine and dine their fellow directors to join them. King Vidor was elected the Guild's first president, and the movies and the men who made them had taken a bold step forward into a still uncertain future.
So 75 years on, the Directors Guild of America represents 14,500 directors and members of their directorial teams, working in film, television, commercials, documentaries, news, sports, and new media. We have a lot to be proud of and a lot to celebrate, and tonight is no exception, as the Guild is proud to join the Asian American Committee as we honor game changer Ang Lee. But before we welcome Ang to the stage, it's now my pleasure to invite Lisa Hsu, co-chair of the DGA's Asian American Committee, up to the podium to tell you about the work of the committee. So, Lisa.
Thank you, Michael. The Asian American Committee was created as a forum to share interests and issues concerning Asian American Guild members. Now, I am happy to say we are fortunate to begin the tribute portion of our evening with 3 special collaborators, Tim Squires, James Seamus, and Emma Thompson, who each have a long working relationship with Ang Lee. Following their presentations, Mr. Ang Lee will join us on stage for a panel discussion with directors Shawn Ku, Karyn Kusama, and Kevin Tancharoen, Kevin, about the game-changing impact of Ang Lee's films. Moderating the conversations will be Henry Chan, founding co-chair of the Asian American Committee and a noted film and television director himself. Before we welcome Henry to the stage, it is my pleasure to invite Ang's longtime collaborator, editor, and director, Tim Squires, up to the podium.
Thank you. I first met Ang just over 20 years ago as he was looking for an editor for his first film, Pushing Hands. And it was probably the most momentous and least memorable interview I've ever had with Ang and Ted Hope. And it was a very small film intended only for the Taiwanese audience. And about the only thing I remember about that interview was saying, I don't speak Mandarin. And they said, yeah, we figured, just do your best. I assume they had their fingers crossed. We cut the film in a closet, literally a windowless, airless closet off of a noisy production office. And when you, as you directors know, directing a film is mostly, editing a film for a director is mostly what you do is talk. You sit there and talk about what you're doing because you have to get the editor to do what you're wanting to do. Now, Ang had been in the country for quite a while at that point. His English was pretty good, but I realized he had never worked with an editor before. So we had a lot of conversations that kind of went like this. I would say something like, so do you think we should trim 18 frames off the end of that shot? And he would answer with something about film history, which would lead into Chinese history, which would lead into philosophy, which would lead into cooking, where we often seem to wind up. And after 15 or 20 minutes, the conversation would wind down, and I'd say, so, about those 18 frames, what do you think? And we'd start another conversation, and that's sort of the way that went. And it was a roundabout way of working, but it was great, and I was very happy with the film and the process. So when he called me to do a second film, the wedding banquet, I happily agreed, especially when I found out we were going to have a room with a window and a door and a little peace and quiet outside. Now, that film we cut on an Avid. Now, cutting digitally in 1992 was not an easy thing to do, to cut a feature. And we didn't do it to be cutting edge, we did it to save money, because Ted thought we could save money on work print by doing that. But what we discovered was, usually back then, cutting on film especially, the director would come in and sometimes would sit with you, but then sometimes give notes and go away, because it was kind of a tedious process sometimes. What we discovered on that film was we could work fast enough that he never had to go away. And so he never did. And 11 films later, he still has never gone away. He is always there and always completely focused and committed on, these 18 frames, this scene, this movie. Ang is not one of these directors who, has this movie in post-production and the next one in pre-production and 2 more in development. I've known 2 instances in all the time I've known him where he actually knew what the next film was going to be by the time we finished. It's always had a complete commitment to the job at hand. And that may be part of why there's been such an interesting variety and why each film has been so distinctive. And I've been very fortunate to essentially be able to learn how to editing Ang's footage. James is going to go next. And James, you will notice, he was kind of misled about he misunderstood what this evening was about. So if he mentions an award or something, it's just because he kind of didn't get the assignment. Thank you.
Hi, Ang, and congratulations on this award. I'm deeply confused by it because I think in the history of all the awards that you've gotten, this is the only one you've agreed to accept that wasn't part of the process of you just sucking up for Oscar votes, because you don't really have a movie out there in Oscar season this year, so it's very odd, frankly, that you're getting this award. But it's a good odd. I mean, it's actually great. And congratulations on it. I know it means something to you, because otherwise you wouldn't have done it unless there was an Oscar at the end of it, which there clearly isn't, although everybody should know that Life of Pi is going to be fantastic. And it really does, this award really does remind me of some early days, in particular the days after Sense and Sensibility, which I always think of as kind of your most Asian movie. And we'd be on these press junkets and tours and whatnot, and people would constantly be coming up to me, and they'd always ask the same question, which is, how is it possible for Ang Lee to make Sense and Sensibility? I mean, he's like this Chinese guy. It's like a miracle. And at those moments, there's 2 responses. One is you could slap them for being incredibly racist and stupid for even asking the question, or you could say what I would kind of squeeze out saying, which is, well, here's how he did it. He's incredibly great at what he does. So, Ang, congratulations. Tell Rocky, Hu, and Kim to calm down there at the table. It's really not that exciting, but anyhow, I'm sure they're excited too. But calm down, guys, and have a great night.
So, Ang, here I am in London, and you are being honoured. Quite right too, in my view. I wanted to remind you of a day when we were shooting on Sense and Sensibility, and you were standing in the courtyard of the stables, and there was straw everywhere, and you were smoking. And one of the props men and the art department came up and said, sorry, you can't smoke, took the cigarette away from you, just took it. You were standing there with your fingers empty. And I came up to you and said, oh, did they take away your cigarette? And you said, yeah. And you said, in China and in Taiwan, the director is God. In China, there would always be a chair, always be an ashtray. And I said, yeah, well, welcome to Great Britain. And then do you remember after that, you just said to me, your English wasn't very good at the time, and you said, the tide go in, the tide go out. The tide go in, the tide go out. And still no sex. and we laughed. So, talking of sex, guess who's the cameraman on this little tribute? Come this way. Yes, it's Mr.
Congratulations.
Willoughby. Congratulations.
Look, white sideburns, 16 years now. Congratulations.
We love you, and we congratulate you with all our hearts. Goodbye, darling. Have a great evening.
Good evening. I'm Taylor Hackford, president of this guild. And Ang, you'll have to excuse me. I set a record tonight. My editing room is in Burbank, an hour and a half to get here. I made the horrible mistake of getting off at Highland, where there was Journey playing at the Hollywood Bowl. And I sat there forever. But although I couldn't be here at the beginning, I wanted to be here because Ang Lee is one of my favorite filmmakers. And, well, maybe it's his choice of primal subject matter. Eat, drink, lust, caution, sense and sensibility. Whatever it is, he gets me every time. Here and here. Not to mention Crouching Tiger, innumerable things. And he's right on the money, as James was saying, every time, regardless of the culture or the language. Now, he also happens to be wonderfully generous to his colleagues. When I was going to China to develop a film project, I called Ang Lee and he interrupted his editing and gave me a tutorial on the nuances of that incredibly complex culture. And I used the knowledge that he gave me when I was there for about 6 months, incredible, but to understand that where he's from in Taiwan, when he goes to mainland China, even he has to get into an entirely different ethos. This man can do it wherever he is, whatever culture. So Ang, I want to welcome you here, a little belated, but welcome you. And in terms of an award, this is called Game Changers, as Michael, I'm sure, said. Game Changers is an award. You know, you came, you made films not only in this country, but for the world. And that's what we're celebrating here on our 75th. So you credit and give class to this organization, and we're very, very proud that you're a member. Thanks so much. And now I want to introduce the head of the panel this evening, who will interview Ang and also bring out various people to discuss his work, Henry Chan.
Well, I'm not head of anything. I feel like I probably be the traffic cop so that we'll get this thing on time. Well, anyway, our distinguished panelists have selected clips from various Ang Lee's films. So we'll watch some of the clips and then ask Ang for his thoughts. Something like, "This is your life, Ang Lee." Except without embarrassing friends or relatives. So now it's my great pleasure to invite our three panelists to the stage. Shawn Ku, director of Beautiful Boy and the DGA Award-nominated film American Mall. Karyn Kusama, director of Jennifer's Body, Ian Flux, and the Sundance Film Festival Directors Prize and Grand Jury Prize winner, Girl Fight. And Kevin Tancharoen, director of Fame and the upcoming film Mortal Kombat. When the Asian American Committee was created 11 years ago, our inaugural event was an evening with Ang Lee, with a special screening of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It was so successful that we had to turn away overflow crowds. And I think to this day, a lot of them are still mad at us. So it's only fitting that we welcome Ang back to celebrate the DGA's 75th anniversary by honoring him as a true game changer. Ladies and gentlemen, Director Ang Lee. Just to say a few words, I mean, now we've been saying a lot of things, so it's like your turn.
A couple of things. First of all, well, thank you for all these kind words. I don't know what to say. I mean, thank you. Let me start with two things. First, I really want to say tonight that I'm so proud of being in this organization. I've resisted before. You dragged me in, kicking, screaming, but you treat me well, and I'm very proud of just watching the film illustrated by Spielberg, and I'm proud to be that tradition. And yeah, I'm proud of it. Thank you. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, everyone. The other thing I want to say quickly, I just want to confess, when I came into this business, I had no plan to change the game. Try to survive, get a movie done, and try to make the next movie. I just feel very fortunate from my family, from the support to everybody who helped me, and all the studios, film company, the audience, they want to see it, and I struggle one after another. I had no plan. I don't have a checklist on the different genres or anything. I just... Lately, I have a feeling I'm a vehicle, I'm a vessel to the movies who wants to meet the audience. I'm the media. When I feel that I'm obsessed, and there I go. I choose the people, and sometimes I go to a company. Sometimes the company, the Fox people are here. Thank you for your support. Or they come to me, and when I feel that it's not a trend or anything, I just feel I'm the vehicle, and I just go along with it. I believe there's a film God. You just have to pray to him. Well, Pi is about faith, a movie about faith, so I'm in that state. There is a film God, and you have to listen to him. You have to listen to your heart and observe and be very sensitive to everyone who works with you. And then have a leap of faith. And then see what happened.
Well, you have to teach us how to pray to that God. Because obviously he's listening to you.
Well said.
Shall we start seeing your film? Because we were going to be, like I said, we would go back to the beginning and see some of the early film, and then do it chronologically like that, and then we jump in and talk. All right? Just imagine this is a bar down in the Lower East Side. We just hang out and talk film. All right?
Okay.
So let's. The first clips are the two from two movies, Wedding Banquet and Eat, Drink, Men, Women. These are the films I call Chinese films. The beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of a trilogy. I didn't
realize
trilogy
with Pushing Hand.
Yeah, I didn't realize it's a trilogy until I did the 3 movies. Oh, so.
Well, Wedding Banquet was the first sort of Asian film that I saw that was kind of not Asian in a way, because I grew up in New York, and we saw, like, every Sunday there'd be karate movies on, kung fu movies on, like, on Sundays, and this was kind of the first film that I saw that was like just about people and about families, and so I picked these 2 clips because they just call to mind for me so much of my family dynamic. Like just the little expressions that the father makes are so much my father. And I didn't pick a clip from with a big family eating in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, but with the sister who's Christian and praying at the table and sort of everybody waiting for her, and then they start eating, and it's just all of that family dynamic just felt so much my family. I felt somehow I don't know. I just felt somehow you managed to capture this really quintessential sort of Asian in America kind of dynamic. So I guess we just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Well, when I talk about it, it's a big subject, but to me, it started pretty simple. I started out making movie for mainstream Taiwanese audience because it's in Mandarin, so it ends up in the art house here. So somehow, I was in a strange place, a unique place. I didn't expect that myself. I stay here because an agent from William Morris saw my student film and said, you have to stay here, you have to stay here. You will work, you will work. And I just had my first baby. My wife is still in Illinois getting her PhD, so we're waiting. I get stuck in America, and so I spent 6 years doing development hell. I didn't go anywhere. And then I got this chance to do Pushing Hands. I was really, because at that time I was applying green card. I couldn't leave the country. So I wrote something in my head. I didn't think it can be made to a movie because it's neither artistic nor commercial. It's kind of a semi-love story of two old men. It's like, who wants to see that? I wrote that to get some Taiwanese award money. I think it's very cultural. I felt myself like an old Tai Chi master as was portrayed in the movie, sort of stuck in America. I didn't know what to do. So there's a lot of feelings, pretty quintessential Chinese. The strange way, I know this is a strange thing to say, because I got a son who wants to be an actor. He was in Hangover too. He was the Teddy kid. I warned him as my father warned me. Don't do it. It's really hard. It's hard than directing. Anyway, it's something else. What I try to get at, because you're hitting something that I have a soft spot here. It's a strange thing to say here to you, especially, is I somehow feel more, I'm not an Asian American. I still have that green card today. I'm just Asian who happen to speak English, who's just, happened to be here. So I made those movies for a Taiwanese audience. I thought, get Taiwanese money. Actually, the government owned the studio. No, they didn't care. Just don't go over budget, whatever you want to do. You win a prize, so go ahead, make Pushing Hands. I said, I didn't write that to make into a movie. What if I flop it? Oh, I'll get the first prize. Go ahead, do it. Just don't go over budget. So I did the movie. It really hit the core of the Pushing Hands. Still to these days, it's very frustrating to me. Some of the Asian audience still hold that as their beloved movie of what I did. No matter what I do in the future, they still love that one. Because it's about filial piety. You have to know you've seen those martial art films, and that's in some ways the worst representation of the cultures. They're practically non-educated people who make them to make money, and it was a B genre. It's very entertaining, but somehow that's all people see here for a very long time. But I wasn't making those movies. I want to make mainstream Taiwanese films. And they happened to be, family drama was one, lost one. People didn't do that at that time that much, but as I grew up, it's one of the big, like Japan or Korea. In Asia, there's always a big genre, mainstream genre. So all my first 3 movies I was making for those audience, and it really hit the core. I was feeling very heartwarmed that I found the audience, but Pushing Hands didn't get to be seen outside of Taiwan, not even Hong Kong. It was there for a week, then it disappeared. And because of the hit in Taiwan, I got to make second movie, which I went in the same competition, second place. That was Wedding Banquet. I wrote that 6 years before I made Pushing Hands. No, it was too gay to make that into Taiwanese film and too Chinese at that time to make it here. So it just sit there for 5-6 years. I made that movie, and that was an international hit. Tom Rothman here sold that movie in America. So I was in a place which is really strange at that time. I didn't know what to do. I had to go with my heart, which is very Asian at that time. I hadn't made any American films. But I think being studied in American Western drama in Illinois, film school at NYU, somehow I get this universal film language, I guess. In some ways quite American, but absorb movie from all over the world. And I guess I'm just a very mainstream kind of guy. Whatever I like to do, a lot of people happen to like it. I think that's...
Well, you obviously strike a chord with your audience, because those three films, especially Wedding Banquet and Eat, Drink, Men...
I don't know how they hit here, because it's about filial piety. Even the Chinese in Asia, they're sort of, it's a passé. Like,
but I think it's a really interesting dynamic between like the parents and the children, and sort of these secrets we keep from each other, and this inability to really express emotion in general, but kind of the urge, the want to, and I feel like they both sort of teeter on this desire to change, but this sort of hold onto tradition and an obligation to a certain extent, but sort of a yearning to push past that.
I guess so. I think the movie hits a core into something. Yeah. It is something universal.
What the relationship?
I don't know. You just pour your heart out, and maybe they'll find an audience. That's all I can say. Those are I wrote those scripts. Those are back then. I was still diligent. Nobody gave me a script yet. I still had to write my own.
Do you base some of the scenes on your own wedding?
Yes. It's kind of a semi-documentary. Those are the lines my parents said. My mother cried over my wedding. That's really a wedding. City Hall, same place. I got married. That City Hall scene when I got married, that's like documentary.
That was you.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. And my mother broke down, and my father was like, face is this long. It was awful. I always have this cynical attitude towards ceremonies. Like the wedding, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, that dining table is a ceremony. Mm-hmm. Somehow the setup is fake. I'm still doing that now with the pie. The setup the story is fake, but the emotion you project to it is very real. I can do that forever. It is somehow, up to this day, I found it's kind of interesting, because I feel guilty towards my father being a filmmaker. It's not like here, some of you might know, it's a shame.
But
when I did Sensibility, he said to me, at this rate, I reckon by the time you're 50, you might get an Oscar. Maybe by then you can do something for real. Cool. It was like that. Yeah. So I feel guilty being that's the Chinese side of me.
Well, let's move on to Sense and Sensibility then. That's your next the next clips that you do that, and then also Ice Storm, which are the Western movies.
I mean, I love just the play between this sort of broad comedy and these like serious moments, but especially the thing that draws me to the end of that scene especially is that she's just holding so much in, and just trying so hard to keep it together and hold it in. I guess something I relate to, and something I definitely see in a lot of your films that I think is so compelling.
After that movie, I get endless question. How did you do it? How did you do it? How's it possible you do it? At one time, I just get so frustrated. I say, for a Chinese director to do the repressed English person, it's kind of easy, After that movie, I still spoke pidgin English. But that movie gave me a great encouragement. If somebody like myself can make that movie happen and get worldwide recognition. Oh, by the way, I got nominated by the Guild before I was a Guild. I wasn't a Guild member back then, but they nominated me anyway. It tells you the movie is possible to do many things. In some ways, you look at it as like a miracle. So how did I do that? In a way, James is right, that's my most Chinese film because in China they have this negative space, silent, framing thing. But I was doing screwball comedies for my Chinese film, the first 3 of them. They're family dramas, but social satire. And because I got hired to do this one, somehow they felt I was a perfect person to do Jane Austen. I think I understand that double-edged thing pretty well. The only thing I don't have was the dry sense of humor. I need to adapt. When I read the script, at first I thought it was crazy. Why they ask me to do it? What do I know about those Curtis, about introductions and all that British thing? But like halfway, I just know I've been doing that all 3 movies. It's the same movie, I just have to do it in English. But how do I do it? And also in period. People didn't understand, well, you will know, we didn't make those movies overnight. It's not like I know what to do, and next day I do it. I have a whole year to make that movie. Before we start shooting, I spent 6 months in England just learning little things, every textures. And gradually I just learned my things, but I couldn't really speak in English that well. Dealing with the most brilliant English cast and crew like that, I almost got ulcers. I got stomach pain. I couldn't eat for weeks. I lost so much weight, and I had to stop smoking in that movie because I just couldn't go on anymore. There's so much pressure. Each time we start shooting, they all put this headphone on, like in the other room. My heart was pounding. I was giving those most brilliant British actors directions where my English is like so broken. And that's why I realized I'm a Chinese filmmaker. I had to stay away from them, just let them do their English things and the camera stay out of it. And I was directing like all the rest of the Chinese directors because I can't win an argument with them. But somehow in the back of their head, making movies, it's like a miracle. They know I think I was a after 3 movies, I was a respected filmmaker, and not because of culture. Halfway, I started winning them over. Somehow, I just know what I'm talking about. I know where things go. I know where the edges is. Even that dry sense of humor, even double negatives, everything I start to pick up. I don't have to know all English culture or English American cultures, but I just need to know that much to direct the film. I need to know good from bad. That's my job. I was afraid of them off the set. I don't know what to say to them, but on the set I know what I'm talking about because I'm prepared. But little by little, the movie was done, and that was a great education for me. From then on to these days, I want to say this, the career is for all of us. This is the best film school when we do it. It just feels like film school. Every day you go out there and like you're learning. And that started me to do, because I wasn't feeling I'd do anything new except it's English and Major League and period. But at heart, I just know that movie from inside out, I think. But from then on, I feel every movie I need to challenge, to put me on the edge. And I have to be scared, so I was doing my best. Otherwise, if I'm not doing the best, I can't face my audience. I can't have somebody pay $10 or $20 to see the movie. I have to do something that scares me.
Well, in a way, isn't it like it's not about whether you use the Chinese language or the English language? It's a film language that you use.
Yes, it's
That's
sight and
universal.
sound. Universal, sight and sound. Something, so that movie got again. Something about cinema. And now we're getting to 3D. It's another media. I'm experimenting on that. And I'm like a freshman to that media. I think we all are. All the audience and filmmakers alike. And it's very exciting. You're learning it. You want to keep your freshness.
I'm curious though.
It's harder and harder for me because I've done this, done that. But it's harder to find next new things. But you can find them if the heart is there.
I'm curious to ask though, given that your films are so notoire, even somehow from the same family, they're so different from each other. Do you see yourself as having a style, or do you see? Did you look to other filmmakers when you were sort of growing up as stylists that were interesting to you, or?
Yes, film languages, but never about style. I used to boast about, I think it's too much of a boasting, I don't say that anymore, that if you have to think about style, you don't have a style. You just don't want to think about style. I think each time I think about style or think something artsy, or some say, Tim will be the first one, and then James will be the second one, and people around me would say, oh, drop it. So how come Wong Kar-wai get to do this, so-and-so get to, Terrence Malick get to do that? How come I don't get to do it? Somehow I don't get to do it. And they're young, inspiring people, they want to be this and that, but anybody wants to be me. I don't know, I don't have a style. Those are pretty basic film languages, as you say. But that's my movies. I just do whatever that comes along, do what I have to do to make the movies. And there are times I come up with style. Everybody has their vibe to their audience. You cannot do everything. Nobody can. Even film gods can't. But somehow you know your place. Like what you can try, what you just forget it. There are things like style is one of them. If I get into that, then I get accused. When I'm so tired, like when I did Brokeback Mountain, I was so tired, I barely can make the days. I was in physically and spiritually drained station. I just didn't want Hulk to be my last movie, that's all. I was ready to retire. I was so exhausted. And I told my father, like, I want to retire. I don't care. I can't do it anymore. I was so drained, and he said, no, go ahead and make it, So finally, you're going to teach? They always do something for real. I said, no. He said, you're 49. It's a bad example for your kids. Go ahead and make a movie. For the first time in our lives, he said, go ahead and make a movie. And 2 weeks later, he just passed away, healthy and passed away. So I was in a very emotional, drained situation. And that movie had no style. It was like my biggest hit. So I don't know what style is for me. I think you have to put the camera where your heart is and be sensitive to, be humble. I think style is just not my thing. I think in a movie, you have to have a unified style. If you do something, you cannot just do it once. You might want to set it up so it's a style. There's a unity to a style of movie, but I don't feel I have a personal style. I just pour my guts out.
Well, it kind of feels like you have a sort of, if there's not to say that there is a style, but that you come from a sort of almost classical tradition where the storytelling seems to be what's allowed to happen, and that sort of drives the camera as opposed to the camera sort of putting actors into corners, literally and figuratively.
I think that has something to do with my theatrical background. I started, I want to be an actor, like most of us are, and then when you cannot act, and I think I can be a good actor if I want to, but I came to the state, I didn't speak English, so at school I couldn't act. I had to direct, and I said, who wants to be theater director? I want to be a movie director, and I switched to NYU, the film program, and I found my media. It's because things are a lot easier. Anyway, then I become a filmmaker. But up to Sensibility, I would say I was basically, other than those beauty shots, transitional shots, I was doing things that write scripts like that, dramatically, examining human nature is all I do. And the movie is about shooting, it's almost like shooting actors, shooting a play, I have to say. And the Ice Storm is the one I really, really tried very hard to break away from it, try to be a cinema person. The film school taught us. And still, when it comes to the most crucial moments, as you see, it's intercut between the two. You know, camera has an advantage to get into between people, where on stage you see profile, but you see it all. But the camera, we choose what you see, but what I do is still examining human nature's emotion, how personal free will against society, what is safety for us, what is not safe when we're not secure, what do we find, how do we find our faith, all those things, human subject matter. I think that for some reason, when I try to do something really fancy, it will end up, you should see the dailies I shot. There's a lot more, but a lot of them end up not usable for some reason.
On Ice Storm.
All the movies,
I see.
all the fancy shots, what's left is human faces. I guess we identify with our own faces. Mm-hmm. Only human faces can hold your attention for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. It's not MTV, it's not like short, hip things.
Now, on the first 3 films, you also wrote the scripts. Now, these 2 films are the ones that you did not write. So as a filmmaker, does it change how you do it?
Well, so far, Sensibility is the only movie I'm like a hired gun. Mm-hmm. Because I was good at something, family drama. I have that double humor, melodrama on the other side, and serious bottom. So I got hired to do that. But even that script, I did a lot of rewrite and influence. So even though after really Wedding Banquet, I don't write anymore, but I developed them. I'm heavily involved in the rewrite, if not starting from adaptation, from the beginning. I think that's part of the progress. I only have so much to write about my family life. I'm happy to snatch other people's work, but when I turn to a movie, that's very fresh. Those are blueprints, the material, and how you see it. What you want to bring out, what you want to change. When you make a movie, depends on where you shoot, how you want to make the movie, how you visualize it, who you choose to act. A different actor will require a different way of shooting and dealing with them. And then they will have a life of its own. And you just have to be very sensitive about what's happening and keep it alive. It's a really organic approach. So I'm heavily involved in writing process.
Obviously, you're very involved with casting as well, right?
Yeah, that's casting and location scouting. That's how I start to make the movie. Mm-hmm. Well, they say casting is 90% of the job. I don't believe so. I think it's only 50, maybe 30. When you cast somebody, you choose your creative partners. You really learn from those people. And what they can give you to be captured on camera is what the film is. And you just have to faith in it. They're first choice, second choice, and what have you. But once you choose someone, to me, I don't think about what could have been, would have, should have, no, all that is gone. And that person become part of the film. I just build a movie on those characters. It's a great learning process. You learn not from the text, from somebody's fancy thought and then type it down on the paper. Those are real people, and you take their vibe, take whatever they give you and start fashioning a movie. So casting to me is all the way to the end of you do ADR. It's all part of a casting. I cannot say where there's a casting, where it's working. You work so hard, the movie will come to the movie, and the movie has to go to them as well. And as a director, you have to blend all the different style of acting and different characters. Like Two Sisters, Emma Thompson was the writer, really sophisticated actor, and Kate Winslet was 19 years old, her second movie. They play sisters, totally different acting backgrounds. And how do you blend them so you believe they're in one movie, one family? So that's a big job of mine. So all of that works, so it looks like everybody is perfectly casted. They're not perfectly casted. It's only, I would say, less than 50 of the work, 50%. But you have to work until they merge, they unify, they breathe together. I think that's, to me, that's casting. And then how you photograph them, that's a big part of the job.
One time you talk about working with actor versus star. Are they different? How do you approach them differently?
Well, you see there, Hugh Grant was the first movie star I ever worked with. And I wrongfully treat him like an actor. And I pay dearly for that.
No, you're not saying he's not an actor.
Well, I think it's not about, director's ego or anything. But star has their power, it's part of the game. They offer a lot cinematically. I didn't know that power. I treat him like I used to think, whatever acting's all there is. I didn't know the image actually do a lot. That you can work along with the image, like Hugh Grant in that movie. He showed up for 10 minutes and then left for 80 minutes and come back to break her heart, everybody's heart. You take a movie star, an actor won't do it. It just, no matter how good they are, you just need some star charisma. That's something inherited in cinema. You just have to respect. I didn't know that. I feel indignant. How come I couldn't stop him from stuttering and doing his things and all that? And that scene he was in, it was horrifying experience for me, because it was scheduled for one day, and half a day passed. We're all chasing around. I did the blocking and did my job, and he started keep wanting to move to another place. That breaks everything, lighting everything. And then when he moves, all these English actors start talking. They want to start talking. My head was exploding. I couldn't. It took 3 days to shoot. Only the last day I realized, well, I shouldn't, don't go out of this room. I realized Kate Winslet was chasing it because she was young. She was a very passionate young actor. And Hugh just doesn't want to act with people. He wants to be on the other side. Oh, okay, that's a star thing. Then I started to break the blocking. Like, I used to teach film school, like that scene where you saw the end, about blocking. It's all about blocking. And then I realized if I put him on one side, which is fine, it doesn't break any of my integrity, and then he's fine, everything goes fine. So that's star power, you just have to learn that. I didn't know my stuff. That's just the way he is, and you have to know that power. Say Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven, he's using that star power, what that image meant, to work against it. I sort of used that with Chow Yun-fat in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But you have to recognize those powers. That's part of cinema, very important part of cinema. You just have to respect it. You can't treat them like actors.
We're talking about Chow Yun-fat.
You have to know, yeah.
Let's see some film from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
And by the way, he's great in his own way. I just didn't know. And I'm glad I sort of lose that battle, and then, and I learned it. I learned my stuff. That's a great film school for me.
I chose Crouching Tiger because I grew up a big martial arts fan. It was one of those things that helped me identify with my Asian culture. Being born and raised in Los Angeles, it was something that I immediately gravitated towards. But up until that film, I honestly think that the term martial arts movie was simply a genre. That wasn't ever really taken that seriously. And I don't think, for me growing up, the martial arts films that were available to me were things like the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies or Steven Seagal. And so I reached out and tried to watch more Troy Hark films and Shaw Brothers. And all the subgenres of martial arts are very evident in this film, whether it be spiritual, mystical, and especially romantic. And I think it's a testament to your direction that no matter what period the film is in, what setting, what language, the characters are always extremely relatable. And the messages are always very identifiable. So with something like this, though it's in Mandarin and set in a period piece, it's about two lovers, forbidden romance, juxtaposed against a teenage girl who is just trying to defy tradition, whereas the other two are bound by tradition. And I just loved that within one film, there was both a hero and a heroine. And I think in martial arts films, before, it was always one or the other. And I love the use of, I want to take a moment to recognize you as a tremendous action director, because I think it's really hard sometimes for directors to collaborate with certain team members, and I think that's a big part of being a director. And your collaboration with Wo Ping on this film wouldn't have been as remarkable if you did not film it correctly. I also think that the character is so evident in almost every action sequence that it pushed the story forward, as opposed to, let's pause, let's watch a really cool action sequence, and then we'll get back to the story. Like in this, the first scene I picked, I liked that there was a cocky arrogance to Zhang Ziyi's fighting, even evident in when she's throwing the tile. It's very childish.
It's fun.
Yeah, and I thought that was, and the way she was teasing the first guard with just slapping him in the face with his own weapon. I think a director sometimes gets thirsty for just shooting action and having it simply be cool, but it's actually a greater task to infuse as much character in there as possible. And that's something that I think is lost actually most of the time in any martial arts film. It's like, let's do some great choreography and let's just get through it, and the dialogue actually becomes just like an interstitial beat in martial arts films. That's why it has the cliche and stereotype for sometimes being kind of cheesy, but with something like this, it was the first film that I think Western audiences saw it as a movie. It wasn't, oh, let's go see this small, it's a Chinese epic. It was a movie that was made for everyone and defied a lot of cultures, and who knew that a film like that would be nominated for a plethora of Oscars and won so many. And I just thought it was a truly groundbreaking for the genre, but more importantly, culturally. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I think I was very greedy back then. I want everything in that movie, and I tried to squeeze everything. And before that, I made 3 American movies or English language films. So I was in a position to have any say to a big action director like Yuan Ho Ping. Like normally, if somebody like me, to work with somebody like him, you have to know action directors in Asia, they're bigger than us. They're big. Mm-hmm. They're more successful directors than the artsy directors. So basically you say, okay, 5 minutes, who win, who lose, who died, go ahead, see you. Then you direct your artsy stuff, and then you just get whatever you get. You have nothing to say, because they start making movie. They're different than the system here. They're choreographers, they're filmmakers. They came from Peking opera backgrounds, and they turn into filmmaker. They know editing and continuity, their screen direction, they know better than anybody in the world. They're undereducated, They didn't go to school, formal school. Some of them don't even read. But they're like the smartest filmmakers. I learned from them not only about action, about filmmaking, period. What movies about, what attracts people's eyes. But what they don't have is the culture side. I made 3 English language films, including Sensibility. I was in a position to do that. However, I made 2 commercial flops in a row. Somebody told me in my early stages that it can flop 3 times. That's your quota. On 3rd one, you really have to do a commercial. Otherwise, you're sort of start to diminish. So that movie was my 3rd one. That was After the Ice Storm, which is a commercial flop, and Ride with the Devil. No, nobody's seen it. So there comes my 3rd one. I went back to China. I was fresh again. I feel like working with the Hong Kong filmmakers, like going to England all over again. I never shot this movie. This is just my childhood fantasy. I grew up like you with martial art films, which is B genre. And halfway shooting, I just realized what a minefield I walk into. It's like I was raising trouble. This is B genre. It doesn't withstand the scrutiny of I try to make a movie out of a B movie, so that doesn't make sense. Halfway into making that movie, I was still writing. I didn't know what to do. I thought that would be the 3rd one. After this one, I really have to do a successful movie. But going back to China, it's like my childhood fantasy and my midlife crisis all clashed together. There are actually 2 genres. And until I was months into doing actions, I began to realize martial art films has very little to do with martial arts. It's actually dancing. It's musical. So forget about whatever I was thinking. Let's start anew. I have to learn a musical altogether. It's really, really musical. And the other thing is I grew up with those musical movies. Some of you might know, in the 60s and 70s, there were 10 years of heytime of the opera movies, the Chinese musicals, but they're singing operas, they're performing, tearjerkers. It's all women. Even the men's part were played by women. It's all women. And then right after that, people get tired of it. When I was a teenager, I started to watch martial art film. All men, women actors have no job. So 10 years of, I think it's like all lesbian and another 10 years all gay. That's my grown-up experience of filmmaking. They somehow all clashed, and I was like somewhat of a world-class director by that time. I did Sensibility and win some awards. I have to put culture in, something I'm proud of in my culture. So they're not wild people, just like you insulted my teacher, I have to do my revenge with Texas accent. I just don't have face to, even that's what I really want to do sometimes, but I just can't pull myself to do it. I have to go all over China. I have to do all the high standard art directions and the ethics and everything, which I learned from doing Sensibility. I raised that bar to a standard I don't think Chinese film ever been to. So everything was like moving up on basically B genre, because in reality, when you take things seriously, people don't speak with the accent, people don't fly. Just how does that exist? So somehow I was doing something quite bending backward for Asian audience, because they're used to something they don't have to think about. The first thing you sit down is a fight. I waited for 15 minutes to have that first fight happen. So everything, and then our hero died in a very trivial kind of from a bad woman. It's totally ridiculous. And the last 15 minutes and the first 15 minutes, there's no fighting. It's like I was bending backwards. I think some of the Asian audience, particularly Hong Kong, didn't take it too well. And the fight they're used to was too slow for them. Mm-hmm. And Chorin Fat and Michelle Yeoh was mom and dad, actually, by that time. Mm-hmm. And there was a sloping time, very slow for a martial art film. People get tired at that time. So I was doing my own thing, and I bent everybody backwards to make that movie. I think that movie works better here than in Hong Kong. Yeah, I hope now they realize that it's something different. It's like, because I want everything in. I want to do Hamlet. I want to do. I remember James. I was doing that bamboo forest scene. I was going kind of crazy. I really loved that scene. I was so proud of it. And European was like really grudging. He said the forest come from the ground, not from the wire that we're working. Like, everybody's up there. How do I do it? It was like throw a fist. And then you go everywhere in China. When do we have time to shoot a No, this is time-consuming things. But I don't care. I have to do it. And this is my fantasy. I remember one day James called from New York. And then I talked to him about Hamlet. And he got very upset on the other end. I remember. He's part of the producers of the film and writer too. He's going to release the film. He says, Ang, he said, you're doing a genre the same as Drunken Master. Just make sure you don't do Drunken Hamlet. Everything mixed together. I like that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, no, thank for all the kind words. People think I'm successful. Actually, it's like 50-50. The other 50%, I flop them. I'm still proud of them. I work just as hard. But sometimes they hit the audience, sometimes it doesn't. You never know. Way into the second cut of the film, I thought I was just on the head to do something not making sense because I want too much. I think you can call that passion. I was very greedy and avid filmmaker. I just want everything to squeeze in. Sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. But I looking back, I was very proud I went to those movies. Yeah. And I have to thank those actors because that's one thing you really don't want is actors think about the extension, the fighting extension of their characters because it's just dangerous. And you have to do the counts. Otherwise, you get poked in the eyes. You get injured. When they think about characters, when they think about the response, it's genuine, not just doing a fight. He says, watching martial art, you cannot think. You have to lay back and eat your popcorns. That's just the genre. Mm-hmm. You have to do it, otherwise somebody's going to get hurt. And I was very greedy. I won't do that again. I did it, and halfway I said, I cannot do this anymore. Somebody's going to get hurt when they're thinking, when they're feeling, and they have to do it generally take after take. That's just like ultimate acting. It really pulls. Like when people in a fight, in a life and death situation, it's the ultimate showing of their characters and their relationship. Some of the actors, a person is not what he says, a character, but what he does. When you try to kill each other and savor your own life, you show the ultimate characters. How can I let that go? And relationship has to build in the character. That's why the choreographer cannot choreograph the best of what they can do, because some of the best things won't fit their characters. Like that wild child, she can fly, she do this. I won't allow that character to do something else. And Michelle has to stay on the ground and has certain to show her characters, and it's extension of the choreographer should share playwrights, screenplay writing credit because they're building the story. When it's a 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes fight, the plot moving forward, the development moving forward, and you just know more. And when it comes to talking scenes, it really adds to the talking scenes, and the talking scenes adds to the action scenes. They complement each other. They're in one movies. To me, not necessary, but I will work against genre. That's something, again, later in my career, I gradually learned to appreciate and respect. Back then, I still didn't have enough respect for the genre, I guess.
I remember last time you were here, we were talking about that whole fighting in the bamboo forest that you shot for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And then when you go into editing, I think Tim, your editor, suggests you cut it down, way down. Do you still feel the same way now?
That's not enough. Tim is right. Here's another thing. I don't know if Americans, they cannot stand long fighting. No. They just want to keep move on from producers. I don't know why. This is the fighting great. Why don't we watch more? like action, they're like, oh, okay, we got the point, let's move on. And then you watch John Woo's Face Off. I was so happy. In a Hollywood movie, you see that the last action sequence of the boat chains, they just go on and on and on and on and on. Like, why not? But at the end of the day, Tim's kind of on my side against the producer. We did do
you come around?
Longer than.
Good. Now, we want to show the next group of clips.
I chose the clips for Brokeback Mountain, and it's sort of one of those few films that I feel like I could say is actually kind of literally perfect. That's a difficult thing to identify. And when I think about my experience of watching the film, I think the first time, first of all, one of the things that just is so awe-inspiring about the film is the performances. They're so nuanced, they're so layered, they're so vulnerable, and it feels so rare these days to see films in which the need and the sheer openness of the human in front of us, the actor, but not the actor anymore, the character. I haven't seen many films that can achieve that level of sort of purity. You approached the love story as truly as so romantic that you sort of walked away, it felt a little bit, from the sensationalism that could have been a component of the story, and just approached it with a very sort of simple, deep need. That was so surprising to me, and I think it's such a big part of why so many audiences found themselves kind of in love with the film as they're watching it. And as someone who has so many gay people in my life, I felt like this was actually a watershed sort of cultural moment in which a big mainstream love story gave voice and dignity to flawed people in a flawed time, reflecting the flawed time that we're in still. And I just, I can't thank you enough for making that film. I just can't.
You know, again, I wasn't thinking all the things you were saying. I try to make a movie that moved me. But on watching those two film clips, it actually hurt. It certainly hurt to watch Heath Ledger up there. I didn't want to watch that movie, so I didn't want to see him play Joker when the movie came out. Finally, I watched it like half closed. I was very depressed. And then Last Caution. I have not seen the movie since it came out. I just couldn't pull myself to watch that movie again. No, when 3 years ago my son said, this is kind of a confession, said to me he wanted to be an actor, the first thing came through my mind was retribution. Right away I said, don't do it. Of course, he's going to enjoy himself, learning and doing what he likes to do, and he got the genes, and bless him. What I try to say, that's movie after movie, and then storytelling part of I was feeling is just doing a job. Moving people is part of my job, but there are things that's special in the movie that stand out, what made me go all the way, and the rest is doing job. The later movies, I cannot express to you how I feel when actors give that kind of trust to me. It's actually a great burden to me. It's like I told you, I couldn't put an actor through fighting scenes when they hang on the wire. You have to, still do acting. That's it could get them really hurt. I saw people passed out. I see Michelle, their bruises. It's like you see bruises like this and that, and her bruise is like this big, one piece. And during that fighting scene, the second week, she broke her ligament. The whole time she was on brace. They just hurt themselves. And the sex scenes, that's the first time she's in a movie. Tony Leung is as good an actor as he comes. And they invested trust in me. And they all know they're part of me. They're playing a part of me. So they're watching me, I'm watching them. It's like they try to figure out what's going on. And that's, during those sex scenes, I spent longer time than shooting the fighting scenes. Thank God I have the choreograph knowledge now. I can choreograph those scenes. But to me, that's ultimate acting. I mean, sex is performance. You're faking it. That's like. And she's assassin. She wants to assassinate him, and he's the interrogator. He's the top of the line interrogator in World War II, and he wants to see her, and she wants to do the best performance, and then she lost in it. That's like my life. Some directors say they got the heart in the head, and that character, there's balls too. So this is all messed up for me, and I remember it was very painful doing that movie. Halfway into shooting those scenes, I just wanted to quit for the first time.
Which one are you talking about?
Last Caution.
Last Caution.
Yeah.
Why?
I was in the hell, and I lead those people who trust me in hell, making those scenes. It's very painful for me to do those sex scenes. Up to the Brokeback Mountain, I still just leave it to the actors. I will design the most complicated shots, so they all worry about technical parts, so we don't have to talk about sex or feelings, and just after the first take, they get used to it, and then we start to get work on it. That's my method up to that movie. But for Last Caution, I couldn't do that anymore. I mean, that sex act is the ultimate acting. It's the ultimate test to directors and performers. And they really get inside of your skin. And sometimes I was just broke down and cry. I just couldn't do it. And on the set, I went hysteria. And Tony Leung was such a sport. He came up to me, the director. They don't call your name in Asia. They call him director. He said, "We'll only expose skins. You have to take care of yourself, okay?" So they're so into it. Well, Heath and all this, Michelle, they're all that way. And I remember watching Michelle doing the scene. It's a simple look. Usually, the actors support themselves. They stand there and for them to look at, and they do their expressions and But she wants the real thing. They're friends already. Heath and Michelle, they're together because of that movie. So finally, we get the guys kissing scene. It's only the second day of shooting. It's like, ooh, we could do a Western kiss, and all I can say to them, you can, if the heterosexual, you can never kiss like Western heroes. Just give me the most heroic kiss. Go ahead, guys. So I was just directing it. And finally, they done it whew, it's done that scene. And then Michelle came upon. We just showed a close-up of her face. And the guys were just kind of fooling around down there. And she got mad. She said, "Come on, guys, I need it." So they had to start all over again, take after take, the kiss for real. Just for her to get that dumbfounded look. That's how serious it is. And they were for Christ's sake, they were 22, 23 at that time.
What's so beautiful
Brilliant actors. Then I will almost say hardly can get that from experienced actors. I mean, older actors, no matter how great this acting skill is. You just don't get a look like that. I love young actors. They have faith in you. They just give and believe. You can't beat that. No acting can beat that. And actually, it gets harder. And every one of them, I had to warn them, give them a heads up. Acting gets harder from here because you have to rely on skill. But it's harder and harder to move people. Like with Sensibility, Emma Thompson, you can give her 4 or 5 layers of complex expressions, and she'll hit it like that. But a simple moment to look up and you ask people to be moved, that's the hardest thing for her to do. On the contrary, back then with Kate Winslet, moving people is like, drink water. It's like so easy. If I give her complexity back then, that was hard. Now it would be the opposite for her. So I all give, whoever worked with me, I won't bullshit with them. I give them my best. I said it to them. I said in public, which is, I feel bad for my family, for my wife. I say I give my best to actors. A person. I'll go over things with actors, whether I like them or not. When we first meet, I go right to the core of humanity, things I won't talk to my wife, to my family. And I just go down there with them. And I get my best shots to other filmmakers, but particular actors. And it's a place that you cannot explain. You cannot verbalize it. It's kind of zen, and you know it, they know it, and you're like there, like kill each other, like rip each other apart. Then after that, you're like, ugh. You're like really spent. And there are times after making those movies, I just like couldn't fall asleep. Things bothers me, give me nightmare, and like when the day break, I would just sit up and start crying. And my would say, "What's going on?" I said, "The best thing I learned from doing movies, I would never teach my sons because it's just too painful. It's very hard to explain what it is, but you just have to go down there with them." And I so appreciate those actors, particularly young actors. Even like Tony, she's like really, really experienced actors, most skilled, is willing to go down there with me, and then they trusted in me. They don't care. As long as I don't kill anybody for real, they go anywhere. I think in a way, I grew up with, I feel shameful to be a filmmaker because we're playful people. To my father's side, in my culture, in Chinese culture, it's called play. You just play. It can't be trustworthy. They're like playboys, no good. You don't have like behavior well and all that. You're not righteous people because you're just playing. But somehow making those movies, particularly Lost Caution, I had a feeling when you play, you're actually touching the truth, and we're all faking it in life. We're just covering it up. And maybe that's why I give my best to the actors, because we're searching for we try to touch the truth. And we're not faking it, but only through performing, through faking it, you can touch the truth. That's the irony of life. I think that's why I was so devoted to filmmaking. It's all like that wedding banquet. It's all fake, but emotion is all real. That I can do that over and over again. And somehow we want to be agreeable to each other, but we're not being truthful with each other. Only in a dark room through projected images, fantasies that we can touch each other truthfully in the dark. I guess. Just
You definitely touch us all in every movie you have made so far. So at
it's
this
getting
point,
scarier and scarier. I don't know where it ends.
But you are fearless, doing that.
I was scared like anybody.
Yeah.
It's just like the attraction. Those movies are too seductive to me. I couldn't resist them. I want to be a good family man.
Wait a minute, what are you saying?
All those NC-17 movies, what have I done? Gay cowboys. That's the truth. It's funny. It takes a woman writer and a foreign filmmaker to see it, to see that they're gay. And
But
Why
it's
didn't
forbidden
why
love.
didn't they make that movie earlier? I don't know. But that I had tears in my eyes when I read the short story years before I made that movie.
Mhm.
It's strange. Nothing like Wyoming gay cowboy. I know. What do I know? So that as far as it came to me. But why am I crying? What hit me? I don't. There's nothing that's similar to my own life experience. So it deserves to make a movie to find out what it is. I still don't know, but it doesn't matter. Everybody finds their truth in the movie. They relate it. It's their movie. Here's the thing. I know when I watch the movies, they're just patches of memories, flashbacks. I couldn't watch it like a story, like a movie. It just they don't come together like a story. So I guess once that goes out, it goes to the people. It's everybody's movie. It sort of detached me. And then people find their way in the movie. It's their movie. They made up whatever they want to make up. And you can never make a movie as good as how people imagined it. That's something I learned from making The Ice Storm. Because I was so scared. Like, what do I know about 73 Connecticut? You know, to me, if you speak South England English, you have no accent. To me, those are exotic people. But somehow they move me, and the movie exists. I don't know what it is, but that's stories. There are only so many stories. I think they're mostly boring. They're like somebody say 14 stories. Well, anyway, but how you do it, and who is acting in it, and how you envision it, I think that's movie, and they can only be suggestive. The Ice Storm, because I didn't know their life, so I was very scared. I kept a distance, and I realized that was the right thing to do in making movies, because you're inviting people to create their own movies. Before that, I thought movies about statement, something I have to say, I have to make a statement. But you can never make a good movie that's as good as how people imagine. I think we're program designers. They get to play the game. So it's a funny thing, movie watching, movie making. But somehow we search for the truth, I believe.
But every movie you have made so far have touched all of us, and you have taken us to a journey that we always want to follow. So we want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for spending the night here. Thank you. Thank you.
Also, we want, the Asian American Committee want to present you with a gift.
I'll share this mic. Okay. So on behalf of the Asian American Committee, and for the 75th anniversary, you're being our game changer and touching our hearts and our lives, not only on the big screen, but also with all of us here in person in this room. Thank you very much. We'd like to present this memento.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.